A few months ago, Raiders general manager Tom Telesco made it clear Jackson Powers Johnson was expected to compete for a starting role on the offensive line. Early reports hinted he might be in the mix at guard, and there was also talk of a three-man competition for the starting center job. At the NFL owners' meeting in March, Telesco reportedly mentioned that four players, Jackson Powers Johnson, Dylan Parham, Alex Kappa, and Jordan Meredith, would be competing for the two starting guard spots. In that same conversation, it was noted that Parham, Powers Johnson, and Meredith would also be in the running for the starting job at center. But now things appear much more settled. In a recent video shared by the Raiders' official social media, rookie running back Ashton Jeanty walked into the team facility and was greeted by Jackson Powers Johnson. What did Powers Johnson say? "What's up? I'm your center. Nice to meet you." That wasn't just a friendly introduction, it sounded like confirmation. If a rookie is being welcomed by someone declaring themselves as the center, it likely means the coaching staff has already made their intentions clear. This is a crucial development for the Raiders' offensive line. With new coaches like Chip Kelly and Pete Carroll bringing in fresh systems and playbooks, roles are being defined early, and that matters. When players like Caleb Jones or Charles Turner line up in specific stances or are listed at certain positions, it signals how they'll be used in this new-look offense. So yes, knowing that Jackson Powers Johnson is the starting center is significant. Some might argue, does it really matter if he starts at guard or center? The answer is yes, it absolutely does. The center isn't just another lineman. The center is the quarterback of the offensive line, responsible for pre-snap calls, adjustments, and anchoring the interior. And when you have a top-tier center, it elevates the entire unit. Consider this. Chris Lindstrom of the Falcons is widely seen as one of the best guards in the NFL, but his impact doesn't match someone like Creed Humphrey of the Chiefs, arguably the best center in the league. Even Tyler Smith, the dominant left guard for the Cowboys, doesn't influence the game the same way an elite center can. In short, a great center can be the difference between a solid offensive line and a dominant one. And based on everything we've seen and heard, Jackson Powers Johnson is well on his way to becoming that guy for the Raiders. Last season, the Dallas Cowboys had a solid offensive line, but not a dominant one. And that highlights a key point. If you have a great center, your offensive line can rise to another level. Centers don't always get the spotlight, but their importance is undeniable. And in the case of Jackson Powers Johnson, the Raiders might have landed one of the best center prospects in the last decade. Let's be clear, this isn't just hype. In over a decade of scouting NFL draft prospects, only two centers have stood out like Powers Johnson: Creed Humphrey, who now anchors the Chiefs' offensive line and is the highest-paid center in the league, and Landon Dickerson, who transitioned to guard for the Eagles and became one of the top-paid players at his position. Jackson Powers Johnson might be even better than both. He dominated at Oregon in his final season as a true center. Before that, he rotated at guard, giving him valuable versatility. But center is where he belongs, and now he's getting his first full NFL offseason preparing at that position. What makes Powers Johnson so special? It's his ability to execute advanced techniques, like the reach block and the slingshot, against defensive tackles lined up in the A-gap. That's not just about strength. It's about footwork, leverage, and quick decision-making. Picture this. The Raiders call an outside zone run to the right. Powers Johnson is responsible for cutting off a defensive tackle in a 2-eye alignment. If he succeeds, it opens up a backside cutback lane for the running back, possibly Ashton Jeanty. If he doesn't, the play collapses. With last year's center, those key blocks didn't always land. With Powers Johnson, that cutback lane becomes a weapon. He can move defenders out of their gap. He can get in front of them or, if he can't reach, he'll use a slingshot technique to seal them from behind. Either way, he creates space. That's the kind of execution that turns 3-yard runs into 12-yard gains. It's also important to remember, Powers Johnson didn't have a full offseason at center last year. He came into the league playing mostly guard. This year, for the first time at the pro level, he'll get the full experience of building chemistry with his quarterback, mastering protections, and refining his footwork, all as the starting center. This is a big leap forward for both him and the Raiders. And when Raiders leadership didn't immediately commit to him as the starter, there was a reason. Sometimes you want to keep your cards close. If you call someone the best center in the draft too early, another team might make a move. But now, the job is his, and the Raiders' offensive line may be better for it. With Jackson Powers Johnson officially locking in as the starting center for the Las Vegas Raiders, the team's offensive line picture is coming into focus, and it's full of upside. Let's be clear, the Raiders didn't just draft a center. They might have landed a franchise cornerstone. Powers Johnson, still just 21 years old, has the tools to become one of the greatest centers of his era, and possibly in NFL history. That's the kind of talent we're talking about. Now build around that. Start at the top. Colton Miller continues to anchor the left side. He's one of the NFL's most consistent left tackles, a top 15 tackle overall, and likely top 10 among left tackles. With him in place, the Raiders have blindside protection locked down. At left guard, the competition is heating up. Early signs point to Caleb Rogers getting the first shot at the job. Across from him, rookie Charles Grant is in the mix to battle for a spot, either at right tackle or right guard. The plan is to start him off on the right side, which is a major adjustment for a player who played left tackle in college. It's a footwork change, a stance change, a mindset change. But if he adapts quickly, he could push DJ Glaze at tackle, or kick inside and compete at guard. That's where the flexibility of this unit shines. DJ Glaze, another promising young tackle, could slide inside if needed. And if Charles Grant wins the right tackle job, that creates a very high upside bookend on the line. Meanwhile, the depth is unusually strong. Dylan Parham can play all three interior spots. Jordan Meredith is another versatile backup who can step in at any of the guard or center positions. Both bring valuable experience and system familiarity. Then there's Alex Kappa, the veteran signing. Now that the draft is over, his roster spot isn't guaranteed. If he sticks, someone else will be the odd man out, possibly Meredith or Parham. And if all three make the team, that could force the Raiders to carry more interior linemen than usual. Counting it out, Colton Miller, Jackson Powers Johnson, Caleb Rogers, Charles Grant, DJ Glaze, Dylan Parham, Jordan Meredith, and Thayer Munford. That's 8 offensive linemen already. Add in Kappa, Will Putnam, and Dalton Wagner, and you're at 11. That doesn't even include the 3 undrafted free agents currently in camp. The numbers don't lie. Cuts are coming. Even if all 3 UDFAs are released, there's still a logjam. The Raiders will likely enter the season with 8 to 9 offensive linemen, which means at least 2 more cuts are on the way. But here's the bottom line. The Raiders' offensive line is trending younger, deeper, and more athletic. They've quietly built a group with real potential, and it all starts with Jackson Powers Johnson at the center. This line may not be elite today, but by midseason, it could be one of the best young units in the league. One of the more intriguing storylines coming out of Raiders camp revolves around 4th-round pick Dante Thornton Jr. Some analysts had him pegged as a 2nd or 3rd-round talent. The physical tools are all there: size, speed, and explosiveness. But it's the lack of polish in his game that pushed him down the board. Thornton's biggest question mark? The route tree. At Tennessee, he simply wasn't asked to do much. His route concepts were limited, not because of a lack of ability, but because of the offensive system. Thornton addressed that directly during his pro day, saying, "That was every team's main talking point, whether I could run a full route tree. At Tennessee, we didn't have the same variety as most pro offenses. I had to be very intentional." The numbers back it up. In college, Thornton had just 36 total targets and ran only 157 routes. And among those, the variety was minimal. Let's break it down. Go routes, 27 reps. That was 17% of his total routes. No surprise there, he's a burner, built to stretch the field vertically. Curl routes, 21.7%. Hitch routes, 21%. So over 60% of his routes were goes, curls, or hitches. That's 3 variations of either deep vertical or quick stop routes, mostly designed to take advantage of his speed. Beyond that, you'll see the occasional post or slant, but even those tend to be skinny versions, not deep developing routes. And his use over the middle, like crossing routes or overs, was limited but not absent. In short, he's run about 3 or 4 basic route types in college, and that limited exposure is why he fell to day 3. Now here's the upside. Scouts believe that had Thornton stayed at Oregon or transferred to a pro-style offense like Georgia or Alabama, he could have shown more and elevated his stock significantly. The talent was never the issue. It's the lack of development. But here's the silver lining for the Raiders. You're not drafting a finished product. You're betting on potential. And Dante Thornton Jr. has the traits that translate. If the Raiders can expand his route tree and develop his timing, He could become more than just a deep threat. He could be a true weapon. Dante Thornton Jr. ran a lot of over routes, similar in structure to a skinny post, and that added to the overall picture. This is a receiver who hasn't been asked to run a complete NFL route tree. That lack of development raised questions for scouts and ultimately pushed him into day 3. But here's where it gets interesting. Even though the Raiders got him in the 4th round, there's a strong chance they had him graded higher, maybe even neck and neck with their 3rd-round picks. Let's look at how the board played out. The Raiders took Darian Porter early in the 3rd round. Then came 2 offensive linemen, Caleb Rogers and Charles Grant. Thornton, he came off the board right at the top of the 4th. There's every reason to believe Las Vegas had a top of the 3rd round grade on him. And when he was still available the next day, they pounced. The upside is there, the tools are there, and depending on how things shake out, he could carve out a serious role in this offense, especially if the Raiders start to move on from some of the receivers currently on the roster. Let's talk about that. Trey Tucker's name has quietly floated around in trade speculation. I'm not saying he's on the block, but the Raiders have brought in a lot of new bodies, and there are only so many roles to go around. In fact, the roster has already started to shift. Tyreek McAllister and Christian Wilkerson were recently cut, and there are still players like Zachary Franklin, high upside out of Illinois Kyle Phillips, a name to watch in camp Jack Beck, intriguing potential Dante Thornton Jr., the raw speedster, and of course, Jacoby Myers is locked in. He's the known commodity. Steady hands, reliable route runner, and a proven producer. But guys like Trey Tucker, this is year 3. He'll need to show real growth, 700 yards or more, or the team might start looking for other options. Travel miles matter, and the Raiders are in a good spot. To close things out, let's look at something that doesn't get enough attention. Travel miles. This season, the Raiders are scheduled to travel 18,000 miles, about league average, but the Chargers? 37,000 miles. That's more than double, and these two teams are only about a 2-hour drive apart. It just goes to show how travel schedules can vary wildly. Compare that to teams like Cincinnati Bengals, 8,700 miles, Buffalo Bills, Baltimore Ravens, Chicago Bears, New England Patriots, all East Coast teams with easy, efficient travel slates. For a team like the Bengals, they can fly out the night before a game and be in and out. But for the Chargers, or teams like Seattle or Denver, you're looking at long flights, early departures, and the kind of logistical grind that wears players down. Sometimes it means traveling 2 days early. Sometimes it means staying on the East Coast between back-to-back road games. Either way, it adds a layer of fatigue that can't be ignored. So yes, the Raiders are in a good spot. They're not traveling light like Cincinnati, but they're not dealing with the grind that the Chargers, Rams, or Seahawks will face. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you enjoyed the breakdown, hit that thumbs up, subscribe, and we'll keep pushing out Raiders content all off-season long. See you in the next one.